This is your ultimate stop for everything sports. The Golden State Media Concepts Sports Podcast. Should I say more? From the NFL, MLB, the NBA to MMA, it's all in here. The Golden State Media Concepts Sports Podcast. Listen now.
Thank you for listening to the Golden State Media Concepts Sports Podcast, where we discuss everything in the wide world of sports. My name is Ben.
And I'm Anthony.
We are back here on a Friday, leading you into your weekend. Some of you might have the whole entire week of Thanksgiving off. I know a lot of schools do that around here in the area, but we will be in the studio Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday for next week. But for today, a really, really busy show, talking some football, as we do pretty much every Friday, NFL, college, also talk a little bit about basketball and baseball. We had the MVP awards announced last night for baseball, Mike Trout in the American League and Kris Bryant in the National League. Kind of analyze those awards, two young, bright stars of the game, really building towards trying to improve baseball. But first we're going to start off with college football. Last night we had a big game. Number 5 Louisville against unranked Houston, but Houston really been a good team all year long. If Louisville wanted to have any chance of getting into the college football playoff, they absolutely had to handle business against Houston last night, and things did not go the way of the Cardinals, really right from the get-go. The opening kickoff, Louisville fumbles the opening kickoff. Houston absolutely destroyed them 36-10. It was 31-0 at the half. Lamar Jackson gets sacked 11 times by Houston's defense. Just not a good night for Louisville.
Yeah, it was one of those things where you hope that Lamar Jackson can basically be Lamar Jackson, be what he's been mostly all year. And from the get-go, like you said, it just wasn't what you'd hoped it would be. I mean, this is the second week in a row where he's basically been held in check, relatively to his standards or whatever, 211 yards, I should say, passing, and only 33 yards rushing. Now, unfortunately for Louisville, they're out. They're not making the college football playoffs. That looks like lock. I understand Michigan lost and still stayed third, but I doubt Louisville will stay anywhere near fifth. They'll probably drop to somewhere around like 9th or 10th or something like that, which now opens up the door a little bit for Washington if any of the top 4 teams were to fall out, and you assume Michigan or Ohio State probably will when they play each other. So now you kind of have the situation where you only have 5 teams with 1 or 0 losses. Well, I guess 6 because you include Western Michigan. But you have those teams that are very kind of bundled together right now, be it Alabama, Michigan, Ohio State, Clemson, or Washington. And for Louisville now, it's kind of one of the things where, like, I talked about this yesterday. You look back with Lamar Jackson, and even though he's, odds are the Heisman Trophy winner, like, I don't think anyone's really going to take that from him. But last year when Houston and Louisville played each other, it was kind of the same thing. It was a closer game. They lost 34-31, Louisville did. But Lamar Jackson only threw for 168 yards. He had a touchdown and 2 interceptions, only rushed for 16 yards. So Houston kind of dealt with him before, because the game before that he had 106 yards rushing. His very first game as a freshman, he had 106 yards rushing. So he still had that kind of capability to do that. Houston's at least seen him before and knew what to do to kind of keep him in check. And like you said, from the get-go, blown out by halftime, and they were just trying to catch up the whole time, and no matter what they were trying to do, they couldn't do it.
It was just really like I said, the whole entire night was just bad for Louisville. The opening kickoff, they fumble. Houston's still a good team, sitting at 9-2, 8-2 before the game. Everyone kind of wrote them off after they lost to Navy,
right? And
they lost another game after that. But at one point, they were ranked 6th in the country. Houston was a very good team. They beat Oklahoma, so it's not like they played a cupcake. They played Houston, who's a good team. I thought this game would be a close game.
Mm-hmm.
And Houston, really nothing to lose. Their chances of getting into the playoff are absolutely done. They were a few weeks ago.
Yeah.
No one, like I said, everyone kind of wrote them off. No one even remembered them. So everyone's thinking, Louisville are going to have maybe a hard game on the road, but still an easy battle. And that was not the case at all. I thought it'd be a close game. I thought Louisville would win the game. But I knew Houston and Tom Herman would become ready to play. And they did that. You could see that they were very, very ready for this game. They ran some trick plays. You had a fake punt they executed for a first down. They had a wide receiver touchdown pass from Linnell Bonner. So they were ready for this game, and they didn't hold anything back. And to me, it's just because of the Louisville offense and the offensive line. I don't care who you have at quarterback. If you get sacked 11 times, if your quarterback is constantly under pressure all night long, your offense can't move the ball. That means your defense is on the field all night against a good, solid offense. Greg Ward, 233 and 2 touchdowns. He also added 24 yards on the ground. So he had 270 total yards. So anytime that you're constantly under pressure, your defense on the field, so they're tired, getting killed all night, it doesn't matter who you have at quarterback, you're going to lose. And for Lamar Jackson to get sacked 11 times with how often he runs and his escapability is pretty surprising.
Yeah, like the thing, like you get sacked 11 times, and on the other side, you only have one sack. It's one of those things where, like you said, Lamar Jackson's probably the best college quarterback I've seen since Vince Young, Michael Vick, Cam Newton, something like that. Yeah, you need to at least have a solid offensive line. Like, at least have something where even if you get sacked like 2 or 3 times, like, okay, that, stinks, but it's fine. Like, you can still run around and do stuff. But, I mean, he's just, trying to do everything on his own. No one's helping him out. And, Houston, I mean, we knew Houston was a good team to start off the year. Like you said, they beat Oklahoma when they were ranked 3rd at the time. And, it's one of those things. Tom Herman, kept getting those kind of buzz like, oh, maybe he's the new LSU head coach, which maybe they actually keep their head coach now since they've been doing well since Les Miles got fired. But, I mean, Houston's a good team. Unfortunately for them, they may not even win their own conference. They may not even win the division that they're in because Navy actually has a better win in conference. They're 5-1 versus 5-2 for Houston. But, yeah, now for Bobby Petrino, he's out. He's not making the college football playoff. For Lamar Jackson, he's going to make a nice bowl game, one of those kind of upper echelon probably bowl games. But, he'll come back as a junior, and we'll try this whole Heisman Trophy thing again because he's probably going to be in contention again. And for Houston, maybe Tom Herman stays, maybe he goes. But you also talked about the quarterback on their side, Greg Ward Jr., who hasn't had as good of a year as Lamar Jackson by any stretch. But he's a senior, and he's, probably going to finish the year 10-3, 11-2, and you see what goes from there.
Yeah, Louisville are definitely done. I mean, their chances of getting in, even if they had won this game, I think were slim. If they would have really blown out Houston, I would give them a little bit more of an edge.
Right.
But the fact that they're not going to be in their conference title game, not going to win their conference, so many other teams with just better resumes. Now with the loss, they're absolutely done.
Right.
So every week, it seems like more and more this college football playoff landscape is kind of getting more and more shaped out to the way we would have thought. And Louisville, like I said, 5. I think they probably drop out of the top 10. Really, this game was just an absolute nightmare for them.
Yeah.
So, absolutely, they're done. You have to see what they can do next year. For Tom Herman in Houston, great win. But for me, I think Herman's definitely gone at the end of the year. You could have an opening at Texas with Charlie Strong,
right.
LSU possibility, unless they keep Ed Orgeron or go towards maybe Jimbo Fisher from Florida State. A lot of good coaching jobs, and Houston's not going to be in a Power 5 conference next year. The Big 12 is not expanding, so
right.
I think really it's kind of one of those situations where he's like a big fish in a small pond, Tom Herman, so he can obviously move to a bigger pond now with a different coaching job, and I think that'll happen. So we'll have to wait and see as the season plays out. But Louisville definitely bad loss for them last night. That's going to eliminate them. So as we transition into the rest of the college football landscape this weekend, actually tomorrow I should say for Saturday, we have a couple of good games. Florida and LSU in the SEC should be interesting. Washington State and Colorado here on the West Coast. And then for me, a game that I'm really looking at is down near the bottom. It's the primetime matchup. It's Oklahoma and West Virginia. With Louisville losing now, I think it opens the door for a couple of teams. Number one is mainly Washington, because it seemed like Washington was obviously ranked number 6, so they were on the bottom of that list of one-loss teams.
Right.
So now you're going to have them jump ahead of Louisville, be right on that doorstep of getting into the top 4. So I think it opens the door for Washington. But also it opens the door for maybe a Big 12 team. I think the Big 12 doesn't have a chance, but if some of these other teams lose, you have a possibility.
Right.
And it's really between Oklahoma and West Virginia, and that's this matchup coming up tomorrow is Oklahoma on the road in Morgantown to face the West Virginia Mountaineers. number 9 versus number 14, so they're still really on the outside, but we have a couple of weeks now. I like Oklahoma in this game. I think they've done a lot recently to really solidify themselves as the best team in the Big 12. Baker Mayfield, really since a slow start, kind of turning it around and having a good season in conference play. So I like the Sooners on the road, and I think especially Oklahoma more than West Virginia. If they can get a really solid road win against probably the second-best team in this conference, I think that'll even propel them even forward into the college football playoff rankings next week.
Yeah, so it's one of those things with college football, right? Like, the way we kind of watch these things happen, you don't watch a team like West Virginia, they're 14th, right? They're not going to go from 14th to 4th. Like, that's not how they kind of move this stuff around, but you slowly build and build and build and build to go from, say, 14th to 10th to 8th to 6th to 4th, right? You, like, slowly doing that. So I don't think West Virginia really has a chance, even though they only have one loss, you know. So even though that one loss was to Oklahoma State, which has gotten to be a little bit later, but you look at someone like Oklahoma, right? They're 9-2 or 8-2. They lost to Houston, which Houston's a good enough team. They're not what we thought they were, but they're good enough. And they lost to Ohio State. You can't knock them for that. Slowly, they've gotten better and better and better. And as far as the rankings go and everything else like that, they're 9th. And you said Louisville, they're going to drop. Washington, I mean, we've seen that the committee doesn't like them. Like, they don't want them in at all, even though they probably are going to get in. So they basically have to deal with Michigan and Ohio State, which one of them is going to drop because they're going to play each other. Clemson, if they can stay with only one loss, they'll advance, but they still have the ACC championship against North Carolina. You get a team like Wisconsin, who has 2 losses, but they have good losses, right? It's one of those things that even though you have losses, you lost to Ohio State and Michigan, you can't knock them for that. And they're close by only 7 points. Penn State, 2 losses, but one of those losses was to Pitt. So you assume if Oklahoma wins, maybe they can vault them. So there's barely only like 2 or 3 teams that Oklahoma has to really kind of worry about, because if Washington loses, they're done. If Michigan or Ohio State loses and they both have 2 losses, maybe Oklahoma can vault them. Like, there's a chance for Oklahoma, right? Like I said, slowly build it up. Like, if they win this week, they're beating a ranked team. Next week, they're going to face Oklahoma State, who, again, ranked team. They can slowly move up, but you got to have kind of the chaos thing. They're the only ones I can see possibly making the top 4.
Exactly. They're like the one. Every week it seems like we have a new dark horse. A couple of weeks ago it was Wisconsin. Now you have Penn State. If Ohio State went out and Penn State went out, then you have Penn State jumping them with the head-to-head victory, getting into the Big Ten title game. So for me, it's Oklahoma is like this week's kind of dark horse.
Yeah.
They're like kind of like under the radar, kind of laying in the grass, ready to pounce if some of these teams slip up. Like you mentioned, Clemson, if they somehow lose in the ACC title game, they're not going to get in. They will fall. If Washington lose to Washington State, or they lose to Colorado maybe in the Pac-12 title game, they could fall. So it's going to be interesting. Oklahoma's that one team kind of on the outside. But for me, it's just the lack of quality teams in the Big 12 and the fact that they don't have a title game.
Yeah.
I mean, if they had a title game, that would make Oklahoma's case even more impressive. But it's just that one extra game against what would have been a ranked opponent is just going to absolutely hurt them. And I think ultimately cost them and take them out. They're like that one team who I could say are right there. Just if you give them a couple more weeks, maybe one of their team loses, then they would be right there. But obviously they can't do anything about that. They have to just worry about themselves and win games. And against West Virginia, I think they will. I'm not really sold on the Mountaineers. I feel like they've kind of been that one team that's had somewhat of a break in their schedule this year and not really played some of the top teams, not really good non-conference schedule. So I think Oklahoma can go on the road and beat the Mountaineers.
Yeah, me too. I think that could absolutely happen. You're talking about West Virginia. They, all their excuse me, all the wins that they have, they've never been against a ranked team. They beat Texas, but if they would have beaten Texas, call it in week 2 or 3, that would have been a ranked team that would have looked better. They beat Oklahoma State. They lost to Oklahoma State, but at the time, not the same thing. They weren't ranked at the time. Missouri, Kansas State, Texas Tech, TCU, again, different times of the year. It's one of those things for West Virginia. I mean, just they're too far back, right? They're one of the teams that you don't basically think they have a chance. Oklahoma, 2 losses, and like I said, if other teams lose, then they all have 2 losses outside of Alabama, and Alabama at this point probably can lose both their games and still make it into the playoffs, but yeah, for Oklahoma, they got a shot, even if it's, call it like a 5% shot.
Exactly. So there's some hope it's better than none, I guess.
Yeah.
All right, so let's transition now. We have Florida against LSU. Really a matchup of offense versus defense. Although LSU's defense is pretty good, Florida looked at maybe with the best defense in college football, if not just the SEC.
Right.
And then you have LSU, who have just been riding high, playing absolutely fantastic under Ed Orgeron. Just the one loss to Alabama, 10-0 a couple weeks back. I like LSU in this game. They had an impressive win last week against Arkansas, 38-10, where they just ran literally wild on the Razorbacks. Florida's defense is good, but I think their offense is just absolutely terrible, and I think that's what's going to cost them in this game. So I'll take LSU. I think it'll be a really low-scoring game. I'll say like 20-13, like one of those tough defensive SEC battles.
Yeah, no, exactly, because you talk about it. When Les Miles was there, they had a loss to Wisconsin and a loss to Auburn. Both of the time were unranked. Now those teams looking like a little bit better wins, but are looking like better losses. And since the new head coach came in, they beat a ranked Mississippi team. They lost to Alabama, but you said 10-0, so close game with that. They beat Arkansas. Now you get 23rd Florida and 25th, assuming they stay 25th, next week against Texas A&M. And if Orgeron can win these two games, I think they probably bring him back. If you can beat basically 4-ranked team and lose by only 10 points to Alabama, that's kind of a good enough thing to where it's just like, yeah, we're looking better, we're looking close. Like you said, I think the same thing. It's in LSU. And what time is the game at? I feel like it's the later. Oh, no, it's actually later in the morning. Yeah, it's at LSU. LSU is always a really hard place to win. Florida kind of dipped a little bit over the last few weeks. Arkansas, they lost 31-10. They beat South Carolina 20-7. They beat Georgia 24-10. I gotta go with you. I gotta go with LSU.
Yeah, they just look like a better team right now. I think Florida's good.
Right.
Obviously, their defense is legit, but their offense is just not really capable enough. And LSU, at the beginning of the year, their offense was stagnant. And now, since switching over to Orgeron, they're just playing fantastic. They're playing for him. He's obviously auditioning for a head coaching job. He's trying to remain the coach of LSU, which is really an elite program in my eyes.
Oh, yeah.
So he's obviously trying to solidify himself. We have a lot of great games really in the Pac-12 in my eyes. We have Washington State, who's ranked 22 against number 10, Colorado. A couple of rivalry games, the Battle of L.A. between USC and UCLA.
Right. The
battle for the Big Axe with Stanford and Cal. And then you obviously have Washington in there trying to rebound after their loss last week to USC against Arizona State. So it's going to be an interesting week of college football. It seems like every week now, for the last few weeks, we had at least one big upset within the top 10 teams. Last week, obviously, the huge week with 2, 3, and 4 all losing.
Right.
So we'll have to wait and see how things play out, and then we'll obviously have to recap on Monday with the college football weekend over and just kind of update you on what happened and just our thoughts on the week.
Yeah, exactly.
All right, so we'll take our first break right here at the Golden State Media Concepts Sports Podcast. After the break, we're talking about Thursday Night Football and the rest of the NFL week. So we'll be right back right after the break, guys.
Tired of searching the vast jungle of podcasts? Now listen close and hear this out. There's a podcast network that covers just about everything that you've been searching. Hey! The Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network is here. Nothing less than a podcast bliss with endless hours of podcast coverage. From news, sports, music, fashion, cooking, entertainment, fantasy, football, and so much more. So stop lurking around and go straight out to the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. Guaranteed to fill that podcast itch. Whatever it may be. Visit us at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Follow us on Facebook and Twitter, and download us on iTunes, SoundCloud, and Google Play.
And welcome back into the Golden State Media Concepts Sports Podcast. Really quick, last night the Houston Rockets defeat the Portland Trailblazers 126-109. James Harden with a triple-double, 26 points, 14 assists, 12 rebounds. James Harden this year, Anthony, do you realize James Harden is averaging almost 13 assists a game? He leads the league in assists, 12.8. This Mike D'Antoni offense literally is a match made in heaven for Harden because he has the ball in his hand every play. The only problem is he just can't guard his shadow, I don't think.
Oh, yeah, no, but that's the thing. D'Antoni's never cared about that. When has D'Antoni ever cared about defense? That whole team that he had over in Phoenix was his running gun. They didn't care about defense. Yeah, you had someone like Sean Marion who basically had to be the defending guy. But that's the thing with D'Antoni. His point guards have always been good around him. Steve Nash, who's a Hall of Fame point guard, had his best career arc with D'Antoni. You even have someone like Ray Felton in New York to have a good season. You had Jeremy Lin come on the scene. Like, you have all these things where people have been better as point guards, and you talked about it. D'Antoni did before the season. He said he wanted James Harden to average, I think he said it was like 15 assists a game. And everyone was kind of like, all right, that's nice. He's not going to do that. But, I mean, so far, 12, 13 assists a game. And he always kind of had that kind of power, that ability. Because when he was in Oklahoma City, he would be the guy that late in the game would kind of be the guy that walked the ball at the court because Westbrook wouldn't exactly have that passing, gene. Now he does. Now he actually gets 9, 10 assists a game. But back then, Westbrook was just like, I got this. I'm going to dunk every single time on your head. So he kind of had that in spurts. Now D'Antoni doesn't care about defense. James Harden doesn't care about defense. It's perfect.
Exactly. I feel like with Harden, I've put him in that same mold of guys that I think are kind of just cancerous to their teams that will never lead his team to a championship, kind of like Carmelo Anthony, because they're going to demand the ball every single play. They're going to shoot it every play. They're not going to play defense. They're not going to pass the ball, and there's really no one else around them. But now you can see Harden maybe transitioning a little bit. Only took 17 shots last night. That's not overly more than anybody else. He's not like he's launching it 30 times. So, averaging almost 13 assists, I thought I would never say that in regards to Harden. So, I mean, maybe. I guess this was probably just the best situation for him,
right?
Mike D'Antoni, and I guess it's kind of working out. They're 7-5. So,
well, for everything to be said about James Harden, and his defense, which there are YouTube videos out there, and if you haven't seen them, watch them. They're great. He just doesn't want to do anything. Just kind of swipes at the ball, and that didn't work. Layup. But I mean, last year he averaged 7.5 assists. 7 the year before that, 6.1. So he's always kind of had that in his game a little bit. It was just always, there's been two things with Harden. One was the defense, and the other was he was kind of that like boring-ish player to watch because he would be the guy that would either, kind of dribble, step back three, or just kind of run into the lane and just basically like flail around Manu Ginobili style and try and get a foul. So most of his, shots, most of his points would come from free throws. Like last year, or the last 2 years, actually 3 of the last 4 years, he averaged 10.2 free throws per game. So he'd always just kind of run in there, just kind of arms flailing, whatever. And this year, still 9.5, so still pretty high as far as free throws go. Field goals, it's a little bit down from what it was last year, basically from 19.7 last year to 18.7 this year. But he's doing it at a better percentage, 47%. He's getting better, and you have the thing where, like I said, he refuses to play defense. He's all offense, no defense. Now Patrick Beverley comes back, who's basically the reverse of that. He's all defense, no offense. So you kind of have the kind of combination of the two. It's where, okay, I do this really well. You do this really well, and they can complement each other like that. And they still have someone like Ryan Anderson, who's like the perfect thing for James Harden, where you like drive, try to get the foul. If that doesn't work, kick it out to some dude at the 3-point line.
Yeah, Harden's having a great year so far for Houston, 7-5, possibly like a dark horse MVP candidate.
Mm-hmm.
So let's transition over to the NFL. Last night, Thursday Night Football, I felt like yet again although it was a close game, the Panthers win 23-20. I felt like we had another just boring Thursday night game.
Yeah.
Carolina jumps out to a huge lead. They were up 23-3 at the end of the third quarter. The Saints claw back in there, score 17 in the fourth, but fall just short of the victory. Carolina improves to 4-6. The Saints drop to 4-6. So a little bit of hope there for Carolina. But the big storyline here is the injury to Luke Kuechly there near the end of the game with the last couple of minutes in the fourth quarter. Tim Hightower got it was either a screen pass or a run.
Mm-hmm.
He kind of lowered his shoulder, or his head, and Kuechly goes to make the tackle. It doesn't even look, if you look at the play, it doesn't even look like there's anything there with a possible concussion.
Yeah.
But Kuechly, he's on the ground, just absolutely holding his head. He gets up. He's on a cart. He's literally crying his way out of the stadium. He's battled some concussion injuries. Last year he missed 3 games with one. Now it looks like he's, just crying off the field. Like, that's got to be literally terrible, terrible news. There's really no updates yet, but it looks like he was being evaluated for a concussion. And for him to be crying off the field like that, he's got to think it's probably something pretty serious. We've seen people miss a lot of time with concussions now in the NFL. Seems like we have a concussion every week with somebody.
Right.
So that's bad news for Carolina, who are trying to still be in the playoff landscape. Atlanta's leading the division 6-4. They're a couple games back, so they're still technically in it. If they win out, they'll be 10-6, which will put them in a good spot. So, but to not have the leader of that defense in there with Kuechly, you got to imagine he's going to miss at least a couple of games with this injury.
Yeah, exactly. You talked about, Lee Kuechly and how important he is. You had someone like Josh Norman who left, this last year. So now after he's gone and Luke Kuechly having missed time last year with a concussion, you're basically down to Thomas Davis is basically like the main guy you can kind of rely on the defense. Like, I know the defense is still a very good defense, but, you have someone like him, you have someone like Ely, you have people that you can kind of hope will be things, but Kuechly was a guy. Like, he was the, call it quarterback of the defense, whatever you want to say. He was a guy that really mattered, and if Carolina really had any chance of kind of getting back into this, it was him and Cam Newton were basically the two guys that you had to kind of hope would be the rallying points, because now with Carolina, you have at Oakland, at Seattle, and even the Chargers, who kind of are like Jekyll and Hyde. They'll have good games, they'll have bad games, but you still have to prepare for them just as much as anybody else. Those next 3 weeks, if Kuechly's out for any of them, that doesn't look good for them trying to claw their way back into the playoffs.
Yeah, you also lost Mario Addison, who was the Panthers' sack leader last night with a foot injury. He had a couple of sacks in the game. You lost him with a foot injury. You have your center, you have Ryan Khalil. He left with a shoulder injury. So they're really just really, really banged up. And it wasn't really an offensive juggernaut last night for Carolina.
Right.
Cam Newton, 192 yards and a touchdown. Jonathan Stewart, only 31 yards on 18 carries. So he didn't even average 2 yards a pop. He did have a touchdown, though. So Carolina made just enough plays, had just enough of a lead to sort of hold on. They give up 17 points in the fourth quarter again like they did last week. So not really anything fantastic. Just kind of did enough in the first half, first three quarters, and then kind of just coasted their way there. It got kind of scary at the end. Saints are driving with a couple minutes left, but they could not get it done. And then Carolina forces the Saints to go 90 yards in 14 seconds, which we know doesn't really happen very often.
Right.
So, I mean, and like I said, it just really wasn't really much of a good game. I just really am not a fan of these Thursday night games. I understand why they do it. The NFL dominates Sundays. Why not put them on Thursday as well?
Yeah.
So I get it, but it's like, man, I was watching the game and it's 23-3 at one point. I'm like, well, this game looks like every other game, just absolute blowout. Saints kind of come back, but it just wasn't really much of an entertaining game. I think it's just the amount of time between. You have Sunday night, Thursday night. You really only have 3 days of rest. You have to travel. I mean, it's really just not far, Carolina to Louisiana, but still, I'm not a fan of it.
No, like it's still like Carolina and New Orleans. Yeah, fine, that's not very far away. But I mean, we're in Sacramento. Let's go to Arizona, which isn't far away, but that still would be something to where it's like that's far enough. You're on a plane. The human body, like, Carolina had a really tough week last week against the Chiefs where they blew the lead. Now you're going to have them come on short rest. You're going to go to New Orleans, and New Orleans is a team that hit and miss all year. They lost to the Broncos the week before in a really close game. So now you're going to have two teams that played really hard-fought games the week before. You're going to give them 3 days rest, fly on a plane, at least for Carolina, fly on a plane, and now New Orleans travel on a plane, go to Carolina, and you have the thing where the bodies are hurting. It's not going to be as good as it was. The only person that really likes it is Goodell. Like, Goodell's the only one because he gets money from it, and the owners get money from it, and the players, I guess, the only good advantage for them is that, yeah, you play on Thursday, but now you have, I guess, 10 days off. You have a little bit more time to relax. But ask any NFL player. They'll tell you that, like, 3 or 4 days isn't long enough to basically come back from being in 20, 30 car crashes every time they collided with each other.
It's absolutely not enough, but I really don't see it changing anytime soon.
No.
Now you're going to have 3 games next week on Thanksgiving, which I guess I can understand. It's a little more traditional. You have that every year.
Sure.
The Lions always have a home game. The Cowboys. Now you have a Thursday night matchup in there as well, which you haven't had for, the last few years, yeah, but before that, not so much. So
right.
I guess I'm okay with that, but I'm just, like I said, I'm just not a fan of these Thursday games. It seems like last night we had a close game. But before that, we didn't have a close game since the opening night. And I don't really count that because they had the whole year to get ready for that. It's not like they played 3 days prior.
Exactly,
so
yeah.
I don't know. I'm just not a fan. But anyways, we'll talk about the rest of Week 11 in the NFL. I really don't think this is a great week. I feel like it's kind of like a barn burner week here in the league. I mean, I guess there's some good games. You have the Packers and the Redskins on Sunday night. You have the Eagles and the Seahawks, which could be interesting. But I don't know. But anyways, let's just go through the games. So we're starting off. The Steelers will take on the winless Cleveland Browns, trying to get their first victory of the season. They are at home, so I guess that's the one positive takeaway from this game. I don't give them much of a shot, but the Ravens will be on the road to take on the 8-1 first place Dallas Cowboys, who have named Dak Prescott their starter. Tony Romo will be active as a backup. He kind of had like a press conference this week where he really just said all the right things, talked about how it was Dak's team, talked about how he's taking a backup role because it's best for the team, and he's done everything right. Dak Prescott just hasn't made a mistake, and I think that's the right decision. But so the Jaguars will take on the Lions. The Titans will battle the Colts. I think that's an important game in the AFC South. I think that really Houston's still that favorite, but I'm not really sold on them. I think Tennessee is probably the second best team right now. A big win over Green Bay last week.
Right.
The Bills will battle the Bengals, an important game for both teams. They try to build towards the playoffs, need to get up there towards 500. The Buccaneers will go into Arrowhead Stadium and take on the 7-2 Kansas City Chiefs. The Chicago Bears will go to MetLife Stadium to take on the New York Giants, who have won 4 in a row now. The Cardinals will battle the Vikings, a very important game in the NFC for both teams. The Vikings were 5-0 at one point, now in jeopardy of going 0-5 in their last 5 games. The Miami Dolphins will take on Jared Goff and the LA Rams at Memorial Stadium. The Patriots will go out to the West Coast to take on the San Francisco 49ers. This is going to be the first time Tom Brady goes to play his favorite team out there on the West Coast. We all remember Tom Brady was part of that Dwight Clark game. He was in attendance, obviously being a Niner fan. The Eagles will battle the the Eagles will battle the Seahawks, as I mentioned. The Packers will battle the Redskins. And then Monday night, we have the Texans against the Raiders in Mexico City in Estadio Azteca. Estadio Azteca, obviously stadium,
right.
Estadio. So obviously a great thing for Mexico City. Going to be interesting to see how these two teams handle Mexico City and the altitude. You can kind of compare it to Denver in a way, so could be kind of interesting. Both teams not really used to that. Maybe more so the Raiders since they play Denver every year. But
right.
I mean, we'll have to wait and see. So anyways, let's preview a few of these games. I first off want to start with the Sunday night matchup. I think there's the most storylines in that game. You have Green Bay at 4-5, losers of 4 in a row. The Redskins playing really well, 5-3-1. They haven't lost in a few weeks if you include that tie over in England against the Bengals. I just do not trust the Packers. That's my team, too. You have no idea how hard it is to tell me this.
Right.
But I just do not trust them. Their offense is not the same. Their defense literally can't stop anybody. Washington's offense is pretty good. Kirk Cousins is decent. He has some good weapons. Jordan Reed, Deshaun Jackson looks like he's going to be back. It's a road game for Green Bay. I can't go with them. I just cannot trust them right now. I got to go with Washington in a tough game.
Yeah, no, it's the thing with Green Bay. You guys have basically had no running back to speak of.
They did claim Christian Michael on Wednesday.
You did get Michael.
Couple of days practice, he can't really know much of the playbook. So
that's the thing, and you have the whole rest of the year. Outside of Eddie Lacy, you basically had wide receivers be running backs. You had Don Jackson, but now he's gone. You had either it's James Jones or Montgomery or whoever else, or not James Jones,
Randall Cobb.
Basically be the guy who, you're trying to patch in at running back. And Aaron Rodgers, I'm not going to put this on Aaron Rodgers. Aaron Rodgers has done all he really can. He's basically trying to do things with wide receivers who aren't as good as they've been in the past. Yes, he has Jordy Nelson, but Jordy Nelson doesn't look like Jordy Nelson. Doesn't look like the guy that he's been for the last, 3 or 4 years pre-ACL tear. And now you get something where they're going against Washington, who Washington isn't necessarily the greatest team in the world either, but at least they've been playing more consistently, and you have to deal with the fact that someone like a Kirk Cousins can go off when he's playing. He's not necessarily the kind of vertical kind of passer that you would like, but at the same time, he's had 400-yard games this season. He's been the player that, can at least light it up offensively. And for Green Bay, you're just solely 100% because the defense is bad. The receivers are okay at best, and there's no running back to speak of. So it's basically all on Aaron Rodgers, and I can't bet on a team where it's just one guy. You do that more in college. In the pros, you have to have something to spread around. So, yeah, I'm with you. I probably go with the Washington.
It seems like Aaron Rodgers, I wouldn't say him more so than anybody kind of feeling the pressure, but the team, and he's obviously the leader of the team.
Right.
So it seems like he's obviously got a lot on his plate, everything on his plate, really.
Yeah.
So it seems like, to me, maybe he's trying to do too much. It seems like every play he's looking for the long bomb, the long touchdown, not really giving what the defense is obviously taking what the defense is giving him. I feel like that's kind of hurting them because he feels like, I need to do everything. Like, everything's on me. I can't trust my defense. I don't have a running game. It's all going to be me. And he's not really taking what he can and just kind of forcing things, which is really uncharacteristic. You never see that from Rodgers in his whole entire career.
Yeah.
But I feel like he's kind of maybe feeling the pressure a little bit. And I think maybe Aaron Rodgers needs to relax a little bit. But obviously now at 4-5, 4-6, they'd be absolutely done in my eyes, even though the NFC North is so bad.
I was going to say that division's pretty bad, though, man.
I mean, you have the Lions in first place kind of by default.
Do you trust the Lions? You've seen
I don't
the Lions.
trust the Lions.
Do you trust the Vikings?
Minnesota.
They stink.
Honestly, I think 9 wins this division. So, I mean, there's still a chance. You're only technically a game and a half away from being in first place, give or take, with what the Lions and Minnesota do. So, I guess you don't really have to panic quite yet. And I feel like they kind of are.
Yeah, well, because it's one of those things like they've had such a historic kind of team. Even they've been a really good team over the last few years, making the playoffs, and it's been nice for the Green Bay Packers. Now they're kind of – it's the first time where he doesn't have one of those like elite go-to receivers, because that's what Jordy Nelson was. Now it's just all on Aaron Rodgers' shoulders, so he's getting yelled at. Mike McCarthy's getting yelled at. The defense, which has never really been that great. I mean, they were pretty good at the time when they won the Super Bowl. They were just, whether it was A.J. Hawk or Charles Woodson, Clay Matthews, they always had people who were good, but their defense as a whole was never like a top 5 defense. Now it's just kind of everything's kind of crumbling around Aaron Rodgers. And like you said, he's trying to make the big home run play every time because he's just like, I just go. Just try this. No, that didn't work. Or, interception, something like that. And now I still don't count them out. Like I said, the division is basically the NFC's version of the AFC South. And how bad the AFC South is. There's no team that basically you think can win the Super Bowl in there. Maybe they make the playoffs and get knocked out in the first round.
I agree. I think no matter who gets in, they're not going to get a wild card team in my eyes. No. So you have just the one team getting in division winner. They're going to host a playoff game, and I think that'll be it.
Yeah.
I don't see much of a chance. So another team in that NFC North is the Vikings. They will be hosting the Arizona Cardinals. The Vikings, as I mentioned, they were 5-0 at one point. Looked like maybe the best team in the league, and then since then the rails have absolutely fallen off. Their offensive line can't protect Sam Bradford at all. They can't create any sort of running game. Arizona is not the same team they were last year. They're not nearly as good. They're not as consistent.
Right.
But I'll take Arizona on the road because I simply cannot trust Minnesota. I took them last week against Washington. I thought they could maybe rebound a little bit. Their offense would get a little better. Washington, not really a defensive juggernaut. But still, the Vikings still couldn't get anything going. I'll take Arizona on the road. I just trust them more. I think that Cardinal D is going to absolutely terrorize Sam Bradford and the running game. For Minnesota, I don't really see them doing much. I'll take Arizona on the road. I just trust them more, which isn't really saying much because I don't trust Arizona that much either. But I think they're just a better team, so I'll take the better team on a road game.
So this was such a better game before the season because this isn't one of the things where like the Vikings play everybody in the NFC West because they didn't play the Rams, didn't play the Niners, they didn't play the Seahawks. So this is one of those things where it's like, oh yeah, cool, and you're going to play the Arizona Cardinals, which before the season, Arizona Cardinals, really good team last year. And the Vikings, you had Bridgewater maybe takes the next step, and you had Adrian Peterson, best running back in football, or one of the best. Now you get Sam Bradford and Jarrett McKinnon or whoever else you want to throw Alciata at running back. They stink. They started off 5-0 or 4-0. Looked great. Everything was nice. They're beating teams like the Texans, the Giants, the Carolina Panthers, and the Packers. Since then, lost to Philly, lost to the Bears. Bears stink. Lost to the Lions, and lost to the Washington team. So, I mean, the Vikings are kind of on a free fall right now. There's someone who, even though the game, when they're playing it, it's going to be in Minnesota, I can't necessarily trust the Vikings because basically the way they've been floundering, we figured out basically that, someone like Sam Bradford, he's a good enough quarterback to kind of like patch in there and he'll be good for a few weeks, but eventually Sam Bradford is just not a mobile enough quarterback. He's not a good enough quarterback to lead you anywhere important, and now the team is just kind of in free fall. And the Cardinals defense is a lot better. They don't have Tyrann Mathieu. He got injured. He's going to be out, but all of that being said, I think I'm just going to go with the Vikings, and there's no real rhyme or reason to it. I just think basically they'll just rebound for a game. Not that this will be a thing like, oh, now they're going to win 3 in a row. I just don't trust the Arizona Cardinals enough because they have been floundering basically with Carson Palmer. He hasn't been the same guy. You have David Johnson, who has good games, and Fitzgerald, who had good games. They've been a good enough team basically the whole year, but I can't. There's no real rhyme or reason why I'm doing this. It's just one of those kind of toss-up games, and it's like, oh, Cardinals, oh, Vikings. And I'm just, since it's Minnesota at home, I'm going to go with the Vikings.
I agree. It's really a toss-up game. And then the last game we'll preview really quickly is another battle of the birds. We have the Eagles going on the road to CenturyLink Field to take on the Seahawks. I feel like the Seahawks are really the best team in the NFC. I think it's between them and Dallas right now, but on a neutral field or even on the road, which it would be right now, I would just take Seattle because I trust them more. Their defense seems like it's back. Cam Chancellor returned to that lineup. You saw the effect he had last week. And really, the Seahawks game, it seems like Russell Wilson just getting more and more healthy every week. You have Thomas Rawls coming back from a fibula injury. C.J. Prosise out of the backfield, a good receiving back, can also do some stuff with the running game. Kind of shifty guy. Good game last week against the Patriots. I just trust Seattle more. The Eagles are not the same team on the road as they are at home. They're unbeaten at home, and on the road they're 1-4. So they're definitely not the same team. I think Carson Wentz will struggle against a good defense in Seattle, and I think Seattle's going to win this game easily. I wouldn't say it's going to be absolute blowout, but I think they'll win easily. Last week the Eagles got it done with the running game against Atlanta. I don't see them having the same success against Seattle. I like the Seahawks.
Yeah, that's the Seahawks. They have a thing where now their defense is getting better. Russell Wilson, he hasn't been the same quarterback, but they played the Dolphins week 1, and Ndamukong Suh trying to make a tackle as Russell Wilson's running around, stepped on his ankle and twisted his ankle a little bit, which basically made Russell Wilson not Russell Wilson. Right? The one thing that's great about Russell Wilson is if all breaks down, he can kind of scramble around. He's never been the running quarterback a la someone like a Michael Vick or someone like that, but he's been someone who can just move around enough so that way he can buy some time, find an open receiver, and throw it to him. His ankle was all messed up. He couldn't really do that. Now, about 8 weeks later, the injury, because we see it about 2 weeks ago, 3 weeks ago, where he started to look more like Russell Wilson. So it's probably the thing of just like, you got a twisted ankle that's going to hurt you for about a month or so. Now it's, relatively healed NFL-wise because you're never really healthy at this point of the season in the NFL. Wilson looks like a better dude. Prosise looks like a guy, whether it's receiving or rush, he can help the team out. Like I said, Cam Chancellor's back. Earl Thomas with the vicious hit on someone like Gronkowski, which I didn't know you could injure that dude basically without taking out his knees. Like, obviously you can hurt someone there, but he took him out chest high and still, basically took him out for this week, probably because who knows in the NFL. You probably take some tranquilizer. Now you're fine. Carson Wentz, he's been a good quarterback this year as far as rookies go. He's kind of regressed a little bit as the year has progressed. You've faced okay defenses throughout the year, whether it was someone like a Pittsburgh or even like Washington. You face like okay defenses. Now you're going to face up in Seattle, which I don't think he's ever seen before, college, pro, whatever. You've never seen anything like this. And the guy basically has thrown more interceptions than touchdowns since Detroit. He's slowly regressing to that kind of rookie quarterback kind of thing, and now you throw this defense at him. Yeah, I got to go with Seattle as well.
Definitely, and we will be back on Monday to recap the NFL games this weekend, as well as to preview the Monday night matchup in Mexico between the Texans and the Raiders. So we'll take our last break here at the Golden State Media Concepts Sports Podcast. After the break, talking some baseball news, we have the MVPs in the American League and the National League.
Want to find out what movies to go see? Then check out the GSMC Movie Podcast. It's your ticket to the latest movies, whether it's a new blockbuster event, romantic, comedy, or action flick. This show has got it all covered. They talk some what to go see now. Don't bother. What's hot on Netflix and everything in between. That's GSMCpodcast.com/movie-podcast. When it's all about the movies, it has to be this new show. Don't forget to like them on Facebook and follow them on Twitter. Visit GSMCpodcast.com for more info.
And we are back right here at the Golden State Media Concepts Sports Podcast, talking some baseball news. We have our MVPs. They were given out last night for the American League and the National League. For the American League, we have Mike Trout, the outfielder for the Angels. He wins his second MVP award, second in the last 3 years as well. He's only 25 years old. He's been in the league 5 years. He's literally the best player in the game. Personally, I would have given it to Jose Altuve. Altuve did finish third. He was second, was Mookie Betts of the Red Sox. So Mike Trout wins, .315 average, 29 home runs, 100 RBIs. Led the league in runs yet again. So, I mean, he's an absolutely fantastic player. Honestly, Anthony, this is going to sound like maybe a stretch.
Sure.
But I think Mike Trout is on pace to be the best player we've seen, like, ever.
So he's got that kind of...
I know it's hard to compare eras and everything, but,
Sure.
I mean, definitely the best player I've seen. I mean, he's only just been in the league 5 years now.
Yeah.
In his 5 years,
Yes.
he's had at least an MVP vote
Yeah.
on every single ballot. 184 ballots. His name has been at least 1 through 5 on every one of those ballots. Even as a rookie, I mean,
Yeah.
what this guy is doing at such a... I don't even think he's in his prime yet. And he's putting up these numbers. He's absolutely fantastic. And he did it on a team that was 74 and 88, a last place team. So, I mean, we haven't really seen that since A-Rod with the Rangers. And, I mean, what this guy does, fielding, running the bases, hitting, and he does it all.
So you talked about how good he's been. He's 25, right? He's barely, if even in his prime, all-star every single year because, whatever, 19 years old, he played 40 games, whatever. All-star every single year. He's been in the leagues, at least second MVP in MVP votes every single year. Won it twice this year in 2014. 2012, Rookie of the Year, second in MVP, Silver Slugger every single year, All-Star, like I said, every single year. Led the league in runs 4 out of those 5 years. RBI leader in 2014, 49 stolen bases in his rookie year. The only player, because the best player I think ever in the history of baseball, I didn't see play because I'm not old enough to have seen him play in his prime, I guess, is Ricky Henderson. He's just one of those kind of freaks of nature, does everything. The closest thing I've seen with him, with Mike Trout, as far as like out of the box, just like bam, every single year in that conversation, was Pujols. When Pujols came in the league in 2001, Rookie of the Year, 4th in MVP voting, Silver Slugger, All-Star, all that stuff like that. And outside of his rookie year, every single year up until he was 26, so the first 6 years of his career, he was either first, second, or third in MVP voting. He basically would always lose those to Barry Bonds because at that time Barry Bonds was just a freak. Like he was going to put up stupid numbers that you're not going to beat. But as far as like straight out of the box, Pujols is the only one that I can think is kind of on that level. And you get with Pujols, he led the league in runs, he led the league in walks, best on base percentage. His on base plus slugging was .991, which is still one of the tops in all of baseball. He's just kind of those like all around great players. Oddly enough, he's never won a Gold Glove, even though we've seen him make really great catches in the outfield. But I mean, he's, if not the best player in baseball, like you said, Altuve. The thing with Trout was, he had such a bad record, but Altuve also didn't make the playoffs. So it was one of those things of, at that point, you just kind of look at the numbers, and they were really close. But Trout is just a freak of nature, basically.
Yeah, Trout won the Gold Glove this year, so he finally got one. And then you would Yeah, you would think maybe Betts because he was on the best team of the three. The Red Sox obviously making the playoffs, and he had a great year as well. But I feel like with Trout, like I said, I would have gone to Altuve, led the league in hitting. He added some pop. He was tied with Trout in stolen bases at 30, so he did a lot of the same things. Gold Glove winner, Silver Slugger. I feel like he kind of maybe did a little more. He added more to his game. Trout just kind of did what he has his whole entire career, and not taking anything away from him, but he had a great year as well. So I'm not really surprised. I mean, I feel like Trout is definitely the best player in the game. This is only his second MVP award. I think you can maybe add, by the time he's done, another 3 to 5 for sure. He's going to be up there every single year if he's healthy. Just a fantastic player, and honestly, I really think he's on his way to becoming the best player ever because he's just that balance. He doesn't do one thing good. He does everything good. He runs, he fields, he hits for power, hits for contact. I mean, he draws walks. I mean, he just does everything really good. So, and then we switch over to the National League side. We have Kris Bryant, third baseman for the world champion Chicago Cubs, winning it. Bryant only his second year in the league, winning the MVP this year. He won the Rookie of the Year last year, so he's the sixth player to do that all time. He had a .292 average, which isn't really going to pop off the charts, but 39 home runs, 102 RBIs, an on-base percentage of .385. Just a fantastic year for the Cubs.
Yeah, it's one of those things with Kris Bryant, too. Got MVP this year, Rookie of the Year last year. Before that, he was named the top player in the minors, and before that, he was top player in high school. So he's basically, for the last 4 years, has had the thing where he always wins the basically top award he can win at the time. And this year, he's basically the coup de grace. He got the World Series title for Chicago, and now he's a made man in Chicago, basically being a Cubs hero. Basically, it's him, Rizzo, Russell, I guess Zobrist you throw in there too, Baez. That whole team is just stacked and loaded. You were wondering maybe if kind of how with the Cubs and the Cy Young voting, you had Hendricks and you also had Lester kind of split votes with them. You wondered if Rizzo would kind of cipher any votes from Kris Bryant, but at the end, Kris Bryant's numbers were too good to kind of pass up. Yeah, the batting average wasn't as good as you'd hoped it would be, but 39 home runs, 121 runs, it was just one of those things where it was too, the numbers are too good to pass up to not give him MVP.
Yeah, he had 29 of 30 first-place votes. Daniel Murphy, the second baseman for the Nationals, finished second. And then Corey Seager, the shortstop of the Dodgers, who actually won the Rookie of the Year, finished third. So for him to finish third in MVP voting as a rookie, that's absolutely fantastic.
Yeah, exactly.
A great year for Seager. I feel like he'll be up there for the next couple of years as well. But we have on both sides just young stars of the game, 25 years old, 24 years old for Bryant. Guys that we could see winning this award for the next couple of years together. I mean, it's going to be a great thing. It's good for baseball as well. Some of these young guys trying to find ways to improve the game, get more people interested in the game. I feel like it's a great thing when you have these young stars in big markets to do so, Chicago and LA. So it's definitely a great thing, and congrats to Trout and to Bryant on their MVP awards. Bryant's first one, Trout's second one. So this will end our episode of the show today at the Golden State Media Concepts Sports Podcast. We hope you had a good day. We had a great show. We hope you have a great weekend. Next week is Thanksgiving, so we will be in the studio Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, as I mentioned, doing shows. Thursday and Friday we'll be off celebrating and obviously maybe doing some shopping. I'll be working in retail, which is not a whole lot of fun on Black Friday. I've done it a couple of years now. It's pretty hectic, but obviously just got to power through it, and it'll be okay.
God, that's the worst. I mean, I work at a restaurant, too, and that's not any fun either because you basically get people who are just angry in general, then you get them hungry, and that's worse. But, yeah, retail.
They're hangry.
They're so angry, dude. They get so mad all the time. It's just the worst. Anyways, God, I've seen some angry people when they're hungry. But, yeah, retail, I mean, that's just, you just get the worst kind of people at that point when it's holiday shopping now, when you basically get people who are just wanting what they want and just don't care about anybody else.
I think it's pretty rough, but I mean, everybody's kind of in the same boat. Like, we're all just kind of powering through the day. So it's not absolutely terrible, but it's just a lot more stressful. I'll say that. So,
yeah.
But anyways, like I said, this will conclude this episode. My name is Ben.
I'm Anthony.
And for Alex, who is not here, we are signing off at the Golden State Media Concepts Sports Podcast. Hope you have a great weekend, watch a lot of sports, and we will be back in the studio on Monday to talk about them right here at the Golden State Media Concepts Sports Podcast.
You've been listening to the Golden State Media Concepts Sports Podcast, part of the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. You can find this show and others like it at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Download our podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, and Google Play. Just type in GSMC to find all the shows from the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network, from movies to music, from sports to entertainment, and even weird news. You can also follow us on Twitter and on Facebook. Thank you, and we hope you have enjoyed today's program.